When folks talk about New Orleans before Katrina, they love to paint it like one big gumbo pot. Mardi Gras beads, jazz, crawfish boils, and second lines. But here's the truth. New Orleans was a city divided. On one side, the Black Bourgeoisie, Creole families who lived uptown, French Quarter, Garden District, the ones with money, old names, and paper. On the other side, the everyday black folks, the 7th Ward, the 9th, the Lower Coast, the people who actually built the city's soul. Katrina didn't create that divide. She just exposed it. Let's start with the elite. Creole families of color in New Orleans had a unique position. Descendants of Africans, French, and Spanish, many were free people of color before the Civil War. They owned land, sent their kids to Paris for schooling, and built a culture of refinement. Think Zulu balls, debutantes, Catholic schools, and big Creole houses on Esplanade. They were proud of their heritage and protective of their status. Now, don't get it twisted, they were still black in Jim Crow America. They couldn't outrun racism. But within the black community, they sat on top of the pyramid. If you had lighter skin, straighter hair, spoke French, or had Creole last names like Duplessis or Fontenot, doors opened for you that stayed closed for folks from the wards. Then you had the everyday folks, working class black New Orleans. Especially in the 7th Ward and the Lower 9th, these were the people who built the culture. The musicians, cooks, builders, and Mardi Gras Indians. They weren't invited to debutante balls, but they created the second line. They weren't sipping champagne in Garden District parlors. They were frying fish on the porch, sewing feathers for Mardi Gras suits, and keeping black New Orleans alive. And the 7th Ward wasn't just struggle, it was strength. Barbershops that doubled as meeting halls, shotgun houses full of cousins and extended family. It was where you learned how to make a dollar stretch, where kids played brass instruments in the street, where resilience was stitched into every block. Here's the part folks don't like to talk about. There was tension. The Creole elite often looked down on the ward folks, too dark, too poor, too country. Meanwhile, working-class black families felt like the elites were out of touch, worried about Paris trips and fine china while they were worried about rent and street flooding. Class was just as much a wall as race. But in the end, both sides were tied together by something bigger. New Orleans itself. No matter if you were uptown bougie or downtown struggling, you still went to church on Sunday. You still showed up at Jazz Fest. And when the Saints played, everybody cheered. The divide was real, but so was the connection. And then came Katrina. When the levees broke, it didn't matter if you were black elite or working class. The water didn't care. But what happened after? That's when the divide showed. Wealthier families had cars to evacuate, they had insurance, they had a cousin in Dallas or Atlanta to stay with. The 7th Ward folks? They were the ones on rooftops, the ones stuck in the dome, the ones who couldn't get out. Katrina proved what the streets already knew. In New Orleans, class can shape your chances of survival. And it wasn't just about money. It was about how America values certain black lives over others. So before Katrina, understand this. New Orleans was never just one story. It was two cities living in the same space. The Creole elite, bougie, educated, connected. And the 7th Ward, 9th Ward, and beyond. Working class, struggling, but carrying the culture that made New Orleans famous worldwide. Katrina didn't erase that history. She just forced America to look at it. And if you want to understand why the city still ain't the same, you gotta start there.